connection. And we're hoping that if you can hear us now, Patriot Desmond or Larry Waju, you can join the conversation and have your say.
Uh, Good morning, Bito, and compliments of the season to you over there. Um, I also want to use this opportunity to say that I cannot hear you clearly. I'm only trying to just say something.
We did notice that there might be that glitch in connection. I'm hoping that the signals are much better now. Compliments of the season to you as well. Good morning. Can you hear us better now?
I can actually struggle to hear you. I think the sound from your end is very poor. If you can be a little bit audible, maybe it will better off.
Well, we're hoping that the audio is better. Since it's not the network, it might just be the plugin on the device you're using. But if you can hear me, it's your thought on the proactive steps the federal government has taken to ensure stricter monitoring of our borders in line with the new virus that has been detected in China. Whilst he's looking to make out the connection, if you care to.
It appears that there's quite some issue there with his connection, and hopefully he gets to rectify it. But one particular thing that stood out for me is your comment about having to revisit some of the habits, that we took up during the height of COVID, having to, put on face masks, regular washing of hands and sanitizing of hands, social distancing, and the rest. This isn't really COVID. It comes with a different name, an entirely different nomenclature, but it also appears that it has semblance with what COVID is, or to what COVID is. And first things first, I think the federal government was right by tightening up, that sort of monitoring, especially for passengers or people coming in from China or even Asia in general. You never can tell. It's just the way Ebola came into the country, came in from one person and then spread all across the country. And then COVID also came in and took a lot of lives. So someone once said that Nigerians are more reactive than proactive. But I think with this new development and what the federal government is doing, I think the federal government has already started taking measures to ensure that, we don't start scampering and running around when the situation gets out of hand. It's best to stop it before it spreads. Like they say, better late than sorry. So it's absolutely in line, but hopefully we'll get a better perspective from Patriot Desmond, and perhaps in the coming days we'll also be having a healthcare professional to still talk about the HMPV, to have a better understanding of what the virus is all about and how Nigerians can protect themselves. So maybe we can get back to Patriot and see if we have rectified that audio issue. Patriot, are you still with us on the line?
Well, it may seem as though Patriot would need to disconnect and reconnect so we can
Good
have.
morning.
Okay, yeah.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Chijuke. Good morning, Bito. Compliment of the season, and it's good to be here with you this morning.
Well, it's a pleasure. We're hoping that your connection via your earpiece would allow for you to hear us as much anticipated. But if you can hear us, pick it up from this new virus that's given a lot of persons concern. Chijoke has commended the federal government in its proactiveness, but we hear that the new virus affects children the most. It's much like COVID, causing respiratory distress. How important is it that Nigeria tightens up its monitoring measures in that regard?
Uh, One of the major challenge that the country has always faced has always been the country not being proactive. Well, Nigeria as a country, we have agencies responsible for detection of virus, ensuring that they curtail the spread of virus from different uh, areas. But most time, you get to realize that these agencies of government that is meant to detect, early detect, and prevent the wide spread of these diseases and viruses are rather reactional than being proactive. It has been the problem. I don't know what actually is responsible for that. It could be lack of motivation or even finance to carry out their activities because as an as an agency, just like the National Orientation Agency, uh, they may have been underfunded. And if that is the case, you wouldn't expect more from them. And if that is the situation, I think government at all levels needs to work hard to see that they are on top of the game. Since the eruption of COVID-19 in the year 2020 in Nigeria and its devastating effect on the global economy, I think other countries of the world have built up effort to ensure that sicknesses, diseases is not allowed to get in the first place, let alone spreading. Ever since COVID-19 eruption in the country, we have had cases of more than 4 different outbreaks of different sicknesses. And I don't know if there are no root causes of this virus and the way that these viruses and diseases can be detected from being so that they can prevent it from spreading. And as for the outbreak of this sickness, I think governments at all levels need to coordinate more effort to ensure that it did not break out, especially now that people are even more hungry and people are more careless in terms of what they eat. Who can maybe it's even possible that some of these sicknesses is as a result of some of these um, unhealthy food that the people now resorted in eating. A lot of things is happening right now, and hunger is one of the things. Do you know that I've seen people that do not care about the state, the health of the food they are eating, as long as it is food, edible food, whether it is healthy, semi-healthy, or bad. They don't care. They just want to eat anything and get away with it.
Well,
So I think
Petra, Desmond,
government to make more effort in that regard.
Petra, you have beautifully put out your point there in terms of making efforts to ensure we monitor and observe what we eat and ensure that they are not harmful to our health. But one other thing I would want you to address is the fact that Nigeria and China have created this beautiful bilateral relations where it's almost as if there is a massive influx of Chinese expatriates and nationals into the country every now and then to do business, of course. How will this affect that part of our economy, considering the fact that the HMPV is stemming from China itself?
You see, there is this popular joke that is going on around the country ever since the era of the former president Muhammadu Buhari, that Nigerian government has already sold the country to China. If you look at the volume of loans that General Muhammadu Buhari, the former president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 2015 to 2023, collected from China. You see, it is not a news, and it is not new to many of us, that the influx of Chinese expatriates in Nigeria would one day affect our economy. The growing concern is as a result of the level of these expatriates that will now find in our streets doing laborer jobs. When you say expat, I believe expatriates is coined from the word expats. But in this case, it is not just the expatriates that are flooding the street of Nigeria. We now have just ordinary laborer flooding the street of this country, struggling to even do the common business that's organically meant for the Nigerian people. If you go to our markets today, you will find Chinese men selling petty items like sweets, knife, soap, frame, and so many other items. Stove, cooking stove, pressing iron.
Petrod, I believe this point you're trying to make about Chinese people flooding, the country and taking up even menial jobs meant for Nigerians also mirrors what happens over there in China. I mean, Nigerians have also been flooding, China either for educational purposes or for business. The import and export situation between Nigeria and China is one that is, booming at the moment. A lot of raw materials are being exported to China. A lot of goods are being imported from China into Nigeria. So it's a win-win situation for both countries. Don't you think so? Now the major focus isn't really what it's taking away from us or taking away from them, but rather how this HMPV is going to affect this bond that has already been created in terms of business relations between Nigeria and China.
Ashijoke, I beg to differ.
Why so?
In this case, yes, it is a good thing that Nigeria as a country is having a smooth relationship with China. And China, being one of the superpower, is the only country of the world among the Security Council that has opened their arm to receive Nigeria in terms of business, import and export.
Exactly.
But the major challenge I have is that the number of Chinese men in Nigeria is alarming. If you go to mining sites, if you go to state, city, the villages, not even the city now. If you go to villages,
so are you talking about most mining sites in the northwestern part of the country?
Now, when you say bilateral, to be frank and to be sincere with you, there are certain jobs and there are certain businesses that you do not expect a visiting individual in your state to be doing, because they will be robbing the common people from their daily bread. And that is the point. The number of Nigerians in China, you agree with me, they are not fine in mining their natural resources. Nigerians in China have not been reported to be mining raw, but rather they are there for business, buying and selling. If Chinese men that are in Nigeria are here to buy and sell, it will add more value to our economy. And that is where we are getting it wrong. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying it's not welcome for us to have Chinese flood our streets. But the point I want to establish as a Nigerian that understood the presence and their businesses, I'm only saying that Nigerian government should set up a kind of framework that will guide their activities in the country, not taking from Nigeria the businesses that is originally meant for our people. And that is the point I am raising here. The truth of the matter is this: there are millions of Chinese men in Nigeria, and it shouldn't be like that. Our visa is open to them, but they should be guided as regarding the kind of business they will be doing in Nigeria, not to be flooding everywhere, doing the menial job that is left for the Nigerian. It is our business. Come and set up factories, not to come and be selling petty items like stove, selling knife in the market and selling brazier and all that. It doesn't sit well for me.
Well, Patriot, you have made your point there. Now, not to digress too much from the main focus, which is the virus. Do you think that there are some sort of modalities that can be put in place, apart from what the federal government has already started doing, talking about stringent measures, perhaps from China as well, to curtail this virus from spreading, not just to Nigeria now, but to the rest of the world, considering how deadly the COVID-19 virus was, for the entire world. Millions of people died, and Nigeria had its own fair share of, deaths casualties coming in from the virus. What are your thoughts? Do you have any opinions with regards to this?
Yes, I have my own view about this whole situation. You see, from the entry points, not just Chinese now, even the West African countries, African countries, anybody getting into the country, I think it is important for the country medical department and agencies in charge of virus detection, disease control, Department of Disease Control in the country, to have a standby equipment that can check even the genetic and how it affects our gene. Anybody coming into the country, our laboratories must go back to work. Our laboratories aren't working. Whether there is a sickness, outbreak of a sickness or not, our laboratories should be working on daily basis. Research. Our researcher must be put to work to research how some of the foods that is coming into this country, the genes that is coming into this country, some items that is coming into this country, by the time they interface with our gene, with our climates, with our environment, how do they react? How do they affect our people? What kind of sicknesses is known from some of these people coming into this country? And can those sicknesses be transferred from them to us? And if possible, what measures? I'm still talking about research generally now. Our research institutes, our labs, and Department of Disease Control must get to work. They should not wait for sickness to break before they start making research as regard how we can prevent it, how we can stop the spread, and how we can treat them. No, it shouldn't be. Now, any countries of the world that we are interacting with, and then we have bilateral agreement with, and we have people coming into this country, don't forget that as they are coming in with their businesses, they are also coming with their sicknesses and coming in with their genes.
Well,
as a country, we should be carrying out more researches to know how our interrelationship with these people of this country that we have bilateral agreement with, memorandum of understanding with, how their culture, their sickness, their food can affect us as a country, and prepare ahead for these problems, preventing them in the first instance before they spread to our people. And the Department of Disease must be at their best. And that is the only thing I can say right now.
Well, thanks. Having dwelt on this issue, I think it's also important to remind Nigerians on their part in curbing such respiratory illnesses in terms of our hygiene practices, hand washing, and face mask wearing. In moving on, quite significant during the weekend was a visit by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to the southeast, particularly to Enugu State, where he commended the state governor on repositioning Enugu in the 21st century. There's also been a commissioning of a number of projects in that regard. What do you make of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's visit to Enugu and his comments on the region's peace and unity?
It's quite encouraging. Personally, I would love to see President Bola Ahmed Tinubu visit the southeast more often, the south-south, the northeast, the northwest more often than I have seen. I do not know his reason for not exploring, some of the resources we have within Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has traveled quite a lot of time outside the country, to see how he can, get in some investors into this country. But the truth is this: for me personally, as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and some things will change about this country. If President Bola Ahmed Tinubu visits our state, not just a state visit, he should visit the state and ensure that he has an interface with the business owners in this state, interact with them, get to hear them, and from your meetings with them, create framework for them, for their business to thrive, I tell you that in the next 2 years that is remaining for his tenure to come to an end, things will change for good. I tell you, a lot of people, when the president refused or failed to visit their state, they have this feeling that the country, the president, do not feel their importance. So when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu visits states like Lagos State, it boosts the economy, it boosts the relationship between the state government and the federal government. So I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should make it as part of governance, negating the presence of the ministers he has appointed from the state as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the president. For me personally, it is part of governance to visit states, to explore more ways, more opportunities for business to thrive. I think if President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can visit more states more often, it will contribute to the socio-economic development.
But these points you're making, Patriot Desmond, these points you're making are similar to the points that Dr. Peter Obi made over the weekend that drew criticism from the APC, where he says the president should cut down on foreign trips and prioritize interstate visits, citing the fact that out of 580 days in office, the president spent 180 abroad. But he received criticism for them, and you're making such advice again to the president. Do you think that is much in keeping with the duties of the president's office as much as highlighted by the opposition?
You see, sincerely speaking, I did not get to hear or read the comment from Peter Obi. I'm only making this comment from my sincere belief about how Nigeria can work. I'm a leader, and I know the importance of the head of an organization to visit the subsidiaries of those organizations or chapters of those organizations. I know how it helps in the development and boosting the morale of those chapters. I'm just speaking as a president of an organization and as a leader in my own capacity. I know the importance of visiting the chapters and the sub-chapter of my organization in their respective states. So if the president, I'm only advising the president because I have not seen the president make some of these important visits to the nooks and crannies of the country. It would add value to governance. It will add to the sense of importance to those people of the state. Imagine the president visits Sokoto, not for grieving, for economic development, government relationship. It will add
Patriot Desmond, not to cut you short, but if you talk about the president outrightly visiting certain states just for economic development purposes, don't you think that maybe the governors of these states themselves also have a huge role to play in ensuring that they make their states attractive enough for the president to visit? If you take a look at the track record of Governor Peter Mbah of Enugu State, he's amongst one of the best performing governors in the state, in attracting foreign direct investment into Enugu State, especially with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's recent visits to France and the rest. He has been with the president also negotiating on behalf of his state for these investments to come in. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why the president had to make his first official assignment of the year in Enugu State. Don't you think these other governors also owe the president and Nigerians the sort of duty that Peter Mbah is already undertaking?
Shijoke, why that is a fact to attract the president by making your state attractive? I want to also say this, that the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria today, before now, had visited different states of this country, whether those states are attractive or not, but he was attracted to those states because of votes. The president had visited states of the country to woo voters. So why not the president also visit to say thank you for voting me, and also to woo investors. This time around, he does not need to woo them to come and vote for him. He needs to woo the people to support. It's not about the governors. It's about the people. There are some gladiators in the states that have influence, even close to that of a governor. Now, having a roundtable discussion with businessmen, and that's why I said, visiting state, it is the duty of the state governor to make their states attractive. But governors that are not making their state attractive, and the government of the government of the country needs to add, value to the country and leave a blueprint as a president. For me, it is just a candid advice to the president that it is not doing electioneering that the state should be attractive to the president. Because during elections, whether the states are attractive or not, you find out that the president loves to visit states. Do you know how many times the president visited Oyo State before he became the president? Do you know how many times he visited Ogun State before he became the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? I am only saying that now that it is time for serious business and growth, massive development in Nigeria, it is necessary for the president to also look beyond the governor and institute and engineer the transformation of growth and development in state by his visits. It will add to the development of this country, and that is what I'm trying to say here.
Well, certainly adding to the development of the states and the country at large. One of the comments that the president made during his visit is for the Southeast to embrace unity and peace. And we all know how much the issue of insecurity has ravaged that region of the country. Do you perhaps share the opinion that with this sort of continued visit to the Southeast by the president, there might be some sort of stringent measures being taken to stem down the insecurity in that region, especially by Nigeria's military, or even the chief of defense staff giving orders for a complete and utter shutdown of the activities of unknown gunmen or even IPOB members within that region?
Shijoke, there is something you will appreciate, and that is the visit of the president to the Southeast is not a joke. The president's machineries and security architectures would have visited Southeast region before his travels to the Southeast to ensure that there is adequate security. So more of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to the southeastern part of Nigeria will naturally improve peace and security of that region. The president cannot visit a state that is not safe. And if this visit is necessary and important, the security apparatus will have no choice but to ensure that that state is safe for the visit of the president. So one way or the other, give and take, the visit of the president to regions of the country, we add to the security architecture of that region. And that is why I said one of the things that the president needs to do to boost the morale of investors in our states is for president to organize business discussion, economic discussion in regions, not just in Lagos or the Federal Capital Territory or outside Nigeria. The president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria should visit regions, especially conflicting regions, regions that have become the horn of Nigeria, like the South, the Northwest, the Southeast. I will want to urge Mr. President to carry out more visits, as his visits will not only improve economic activity within that region, but also boost the peace and security that we are advocating for that region.
Well, in moving on to another issue in the news, whilst we talk about developments of regions and states' performances, the federal government, owing to its plan to make the livelihoods of Nigerians better, implemented the wage review with a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira. In line with the current economic realities, a lot of persons also criticized the figure. But despite the figure being as it may, some states fell short of full implementation. This morning, we hear talks that the NLC is considering a wage review as fresh agitations mount in states over the non-implementation of the new minimum wage. It's 2025. Another challenge is how well this wages would enable families fend going into the year in line with the current inflation at well over 34%. Let's get your thoughts on this.
You see, sincerely, Bito, any state that is not paying the agreed 70,000 minimum wage should be prosecuted. The governors should be prosecuted. Do you even know why FAC is allocated and how it's being distributed? It's as a result of there are certain factors they consider: capital infrastructure and recurrent expenditure as regard the size of the state. So now they now put into consideration the number of local governments and some of the employees of the state. You see, most state governors that are finding it difficult to pay this amount, 70,000 a month for workers in their respective states, should be prosecuted as criminals. The reason is because you, as a governor of a state with vast population of young people, land, and access to certain resources, but because of lack of directionate leadership and vision, as this state finds it difficult to generate one era, this state finds it difficult to generate anything outside what is being allocated to them. And in some events that some of this state generated something, this XYZ amount that is being generated by state is diverted. Is diverted by some of these governors in the state, leaving workers with no choice. And that is the point I want to establish here, that there is no state in Nigeria that shouldn't pay the 70,000. I want the spokesman of any state governor to come and challenge me. Let's give them the indices why they should be able to pay, from drawing from what is being allocated to them and what is expected of them to generate from their community, from their state. So any state, no state governor should come up with this reason that they don't have enough money. Why are you not having enough money? Those are the questions. Don't you have the human capital? Don't you have the national resources? Now, what is missing is the ability to convert these natural resources and human resources to wealth. And that should be the sole responsibility of governors. And that is their own failure. And they shouldn't allow the workers that are giving in their best to the development of the state to pay for their lackadaisical behavior among these governors. And that is the truth. No matter how we want to paint this situation, there is no state government in Nigeria today that should come up with the excuse that what is being allocated with its responsibility that it has to bear can't pay the 70,000 minimum wage. No state governor should be allowed with this kind of narrative. And I think the federal government should have a more better synergy. Governments should function more closely to see that there is a way that the federal government can supervise. I know the state governors have the right and the power to govern their states, but there should be institutions that should check the state government beyond the House of Assembly.
Now,
Because the House of Assembly, the House
Petra
of Assembly
Desmond,
in
Petra
state
Desmond,
are supposed to
if
be
you
a check
remember, if
to
you
the
remember the
executive in the.
situation of the local government autonomy, administrative and financial autonomy granted to LGAs across the country, one of the very strong reasons why that implementation took place in almost all states of the federation immediately was declared by the Supreme Court is because of the comments of the AGF citing that states who or state governors that do not go by the ruling of the Supreme Court would have to contend with the federal might. Now, do you think that maybe if the federal government were to take up the issue of the new minimum wage the same way they address the issue of the local government autonomy, we will see some sort of headway in this bottleneck that has bedeviled most states and civil servants across the country? And will it also, to a certain level, take down the stress and the workload from NLC so that they can focus on other matters that affect the Nigerian worker?
Don't forget, Shijuki, that even as of today, despite the rulings by the Supreme Court on states and local governments as separation of accounts and giving autonomy to the local governments, do you know that majority of the states are yet to conduct their local government elections? One example of those states is Lagos State, or Ondo State. Ondo State will be conducting their own election next week or thereabout, on the 16th or thereabout. You see, there are so many states today that are yet to conduct these same elections. And then, beyond conducting this election, you find out that though it is to give autonomy to the local government, but to truthfully and sincerely speaking, that autonomy that we are advocating for this local government chairman will still not get it. Because with what I have seen, the parade that I've seen exhibited by state governors or state governments in terms of the conducting this local government election is more or less like handpicking individuals and installing them as governors, as chairmen and councillors. The state governor will still be in charge of controlling the resources. So I think governments, beyond lip services, should set up institutions that can take certain responsibility away from the governors. The governors, and that is why I personally do not speak with any iota of pity to the governors, because the governors are not fair to the people of the state. I personally expected more from the state government. If state governors are doing as much as the federal government is doing, we won't be having this complaint that we're having in Nigeria. The state governors are not really governing. You cannot see what you see at the federal level. You don't see it at state level. As sometimes we need to give the National Assembly some kudos. The state assemblies are not even doing anything. They are supposed to check the excesses of the executives in government as governors in states. But the assembly members are also stooge, majority of them are stooge to the governors, therefore not giving that expected bite of checking the excesses of governors in states. And as regards the AGF, you see, the Accountant General of also state governors are appointees of the state governors that do not really have a say as regards how money is being spent. So the governors have excess powers, and these powers is actually intoxicating them and not allowing them to give their best to the governor. There have been allegations of how some state governors, the bailout fund that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu gave to states before it was leaked, before the AGF released this result, before the finance minister released the report to us, to the Nigerian people. Do you know that there are allegations and the state governors have not been able to come out to refuse that allegation. There were allegations that as this money is being given to states, instead of judiciously using it to manage the pressure of petrol fuel subsidy, this money are now diverted in dollars and stuck in foreign accounts.
In the country and that of the new minimum wage. You will see that the local government autonomy has garnered more momentum, has gained more acceptance, has had more implementation across more states in the country than the minimum wage, which came about long before the local government autonomy was granted to these LGAs. Where is the problem?
The reason? The reason is because there was a pressure by
who? By who?
General
By
and the
who?
Supreme Court that by the federal government that state will not get allocation. The reason why you see that this local government autonomy is gaining or gaining more momentum is because now there is a little bit of measures to ensure that the state complies. And what is that? That no state governors will receive this allocation. And this money has not been going to the local government. So the state governors are sitting up, encouraging that election should come up so that they can get this money. They are doing it because there is a what? A measure. Now, as regards minimum wage, there is no pressure from the federal government. There is no pressure from the state assembly. There is
the only pressure is coming in from the NLC.
Make the state governor to sit up.
The only pressure is coming in from the NLC that the state governors feel like they can always overlook or trample upon. Is that what you're saying?
See, I don't know what they do at FEC, Federal Executive Council. I don't know what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu tells or discuss with these people, these governors. But the truth is there should be a synergy, a better synergy between the federal government and the state government. The reason is because state governors, they have their own caucus and they do what they feel like doing. They don't comply, even though they are in the same party with the governor, with the president. Even though they are in the same ruling party, majority of these governors are in the same ruling party. They seem to do their things their own way, and I don't know the reason. For me personally, my own opinion, their reason is to be able to steal a lot of money.
Now talking about money, Patriot Desmond, talking about the money in question now, with the concerted efforts we're all calling for an implementation of the new minimum wage, there is a challenge of what inflation would do to whatever figure is improved upon. Noting that in mind, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is promising that this year he would bring down inflation to 15%. Economists have said it is not logically possible. Inflation is at 34% as it were, and bringing it down to 15% in a single calendar year will take a miracle of the CBN that many do not see possible. How much of a factor does inflation play in rendering whatever minimum wage is agreed upon consequentially useless in that perspective?
First of all, Bito, don't forget that we are dealing with an economy that is dollarized. And then, if you put it side by side, when the workers are getting 19,000 minimum wage, thereabouts, if you exchange it with the dollar as at that time, you will see that the workers are getting more that time, and it does not affect inflation. Today, what we are giving to workers now is 70,000. How much is a dollar? This 70,000 is less than $60. It's less than $60 as of today. Now, talking about inflation. We are suffering inflation because of some of the policies of the president. And then it is possible that the president can bring down the inflation, because the factor that contribute to inflation in Nigeria is not logical compared to other countries of the world. there are certain factors that contributes to inflation here, and that is why you see that we need to do what they call social re-engineering and giving out orientation to the people. It is not the market force that determines inflation in Nigeria. It is individual approach that determines inflation here in Nigeria. People will just get a rumor that fuel is now being sold for 1,000 from maybe, for example, from 500 to 700, and immediately, without following the tune of market, you see that business owners in Nigeria will start increasing the price of their commodity in a manner that is insane, in a manner that is not logically correct. So, if the president says that it's going to bring back reduce the rate of inflation from the 33% or 30% to 15%, it's possible. Let's see if he reverses some of his policies, and let's see how the people, because inflation in Nigeria is controlled by individuals, by certain factors, and by certain gladiators.
Now, talking about these policies, which you are hopeful that if he reverses, it would affect the inflation rate. One of those policies the Southern monarchs also spoke about is this food duty import waiver. Now, they're urging him to tackle food crisis, but it almost feels as though the Nigerian Customs Service didn't give room for this policy to take flight. The duty import window is fast closing in the period it was agreed upon last year, and we have not really seen how that import duty window has affected the food price in the market. What do you make of that policy, and how, beyond declaring a state of emergency on food security, can the federal government tackle the food crisis?
You see, there are certain things you need to understand, and that is governance should be beyond lip services. I don't expect a government to be playing games with the citizens. You know, there are certain things. Now, when you say custom do not allow, that is to tell you that the federal government is not ready to allow the takeoff of that policy. So just don't use the word custom. When you use the word custom, you are trying to cheat this government. If the government has said that they have a policy to bring succor and relief to the people in order to cushion the economy so that the economy can contract, you are telling me now that custom did not allow it. For me, I will not accept that. I would rather put it that the federal government is not ready yet to allow that policy to kick off. And that is the truth of the matter.
Well, if the federal government is not ready to allow the policy kickoff, why did the federal government make that statement in the first place? Why were the hopes of farmers, the hopes of most Nigerians raised, the hopes of businessmen?
That is playing politics with the people. That is the insincerity of government that I have always talked about. You see, Nigeria government needs to sit up, and the reason why they are not sitting up and they can play chess and what and dice with us is because they have already stiffened the power of the people. The people would not even have the power to speak. The power to speak, the power to call the government to order through the National Assembly, the power to even recall the people through democratic process. You see, the government of Nigeria is having their way, and they can do anything with our life. The federal government of Nigeria, the state government, the local government of Nigeria have excess power that cannot be checked by the people. And the government can do anything and play politics with us. It is political. It is political in the sense that they want to douse the tension and make the people comply with them, and to show some level of cooperation with their policies. So it is easy for the government to set up a camera in terms of a broadcast and tell the people that they are going to do this between this time and this time in a sane country, and at the expiration of the framework of that time frame, and that policy is not being materialized, and nobody can question the government. Is that not
Let's
political?
remind
Is that
Nigerians
not
of the time frame
insecurity?
because it is more than 6 months. Particularly, it was announced on the 8th of July 2024. It was supposed to elapse on the 31st of December 2024. And 5 months down the line, that 150 free days has expired without many companies coming out to import the maize, the wheat, and other grains that were declared as duty free weavers. Now, this challenge in holding leadership accountable, who in the Nigerian economy now, is it the CEOs, is it the National Assembly, who takes this case for the Nigerian people and says, you know what, 150 days passed and we did not benefit from this policy?
Something that will be more shocking to you, Bito, is that at the end of the day, you will get a report from the federal government that certain people actually benefited from this waiver at the end of the day. Just watch, mark my word, and write down to this date.
And they benefited
Let
and it
me
did
tell
not affect the market price of these commodities, especially at the Yuletide. Nigerians had to buy food items for even a higher price at the markets.
Bito, the policy itself is not targeted at reducing the price of food during Yuletide. It's about solving the problem of food insecurity. Nigeria, as a country, due to the policy of the subsidy removal, unification of our exchange rates, saw the increase in cost of living, which affected a lot of people because the purchasing power of the Nigerian people gets weakened by the day due to inflation orchestrated by cost of production. And the federal government thought it out well that it would be nice for the period of this month and that month, if certain food is given waivers, it will affect, and that is the intention of the government. But why is this policy not materializing that it will now affect the prices of commodities in the market? And the government is not doing anything. It's my concern here. I am not talking about the legitimacy of how this will affect the economy. It's about the insincerity that I'm inked upon now. The insincerity and lack of transparency by the same government that already thought out something that this would affect the economy. And yet, this policy is not seeing the light of the day, and nobody is being prosecuted. And the National Assembly, that is supposed to speak for the people, are also not interested in taking up anything against the federal government, against the executive of the federal government. So, who else are we going to cry to as the common people? It is only the media, and I hope the president gets to see that his policy that he promised to bring succor and to relieve the biting effect of subsidy removal has not yielded any positive impact because of the jeopardy, let me use the word jeopardy, by custom and some people he has appointed to oversee that policy.
Now, because of time, we might just keep the political party and just to chip it in with insecurity. We can pick it up from there.
Certainly, I was going to go there because the food crisis that we're currently facing, B2, as a country, is not totally unrelated to the insecurity, especially the banditry and kidnapping in the northwest. Now, Patriot, the military, by the statements of the Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa, is considering, engaging the services of local arms manufacturers in the fight against insurgency. Now, mind you, the Nigerian military has an artillery of sophisticated weaponry that has shown to have given them a certain level of success in the fight against insurgency. Why do you think that perhaps the CDS has decided that the military will engage these local arms manufacturers to fight banditry, insurgency, kidnapping, and all these vices in the country?
That statement is not clear. Maybe the CDS needs to give more clarification as regards this statement that she wants to work with local arms production to fight the banditry, because if it's about sophistication, in the last 12 years, if you look at what the federal government has budgeted for fighting insecurity is not less than 24% of our budget. Over 24, 25, 26% of our budget, higher than our education, higher than palliative and fighting hunger and all that. What the federal government has marked for fighting insecurity is really huge. And then if it is about weapons, if it's about sophistication of weapons, I think the federal government and the Nigerian military and the Nigerian police have enough weapons.
No, I think it's from the angle of illegal arms in circulation, particularly with what is happening in Plateau State. It was heard that, you remember that this year they had destroyed a first catch of illegal arms, which they said a large number came from such manufacturers. So I think it's in line with that.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Bito. I know about that. You know, the number of small arms, light weapon that is in circulation and is locally produced is massive. Is massive. And most of the people who patronize them are these hunters, these vigilante groups. Don't forget that these vigilante groups and these hunters, they are in thousands, and all of them have arms. And these arms and ammunition is produced by this local arms producer. And don't forget that why some of these people called hunters can be legitimate on the part of protecting the state, some can use it against the state. So working with the producer means that they can start licensing and numbering the number of these arms that is being produced so that they can monitor the distribution of these small weapons so that it doesn't go into the hands of these lakurawas, these bandits, and these kidnappers and the rest of them. Because whether you like it or whether it is a foreign-made ammunition or locally made ammunition, they are all weapons of destruction and should not be allowed to move freely in our community, especially in a country where our borders are porous and we do not have enough security men, policemen that can check the movement of some of this security. So apart from that, in my advice now, or my comment now to that statement, is that beyond working with the producers of this locally made ammunition, it is also important that the federal government works on stomach infrastructure, because there is no amount of warfare, there's no amount of offensive that you can put out there against banditry, insecurity, that can help you achieve a total success. For you to achieve a success in your war against banditry, in your war against insecurity, it has to be two directions. It has to be offensive and unoffensive. And why I said you need to look at the social welfare. You need to invest more. The federal government needs to invest more in the social welfare package that deliver relief to the people, because a lot of people are lured. A lot of people are convinced to go into criminality because of frustration as a result of hunger and poor socio-economic framework. So one of the best approach, as the government is increasing their offensive against banditry, kidnappers, and crimes, government should also make their social welfare more robust, that can take care, that can see to the needs of the young population, the need to survival, the need to shelter, the need to basic life amenities. Our social welfare net needs to be improved upon to ensure that nobody gets into crime because of frustration as a means of survival.
Well, Patriot Desmond, it's just as you have rightly pointed out, it's about expanding our social welfare net to ensure that every single person in the country is captured within that sphere. We must thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Patriot Desmond Fowobi, President, Nigerian Nexus.
Thank you so much for having me this morning, and once again, compliments of the season. It is a new year. And my New Year resolution is I wouldn't be coming to the studio late anymore.
Thank you.
That's a nice place to leave it. We'll hope we can hold you by that word.